written by a fan journalist, for example, can still be a rather contentious article if the editors themselves decide to change the direction of the article. Anyway.
Over the weekend, the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelans that it says are gang members.
Yeah, we're going to obviously start off on our news coverage with the Burger Reich. It is upon us. It is here. Very much so. It is incredibly damaging. The Alien Enemies Act is being used for the first time ever in U.S. history when there is no active war happening. This is devastating for many different reasons, but it is one of the darker chapters of American history when we had Japanese internment camps here in the United States of America, as you guys might recall, during World War II. Instead of learning from those lessons and vowing to never repeat them again, Donald Trump has now decided to use that same act, this time against Venezuelans that he actually brought here, Venezuelans that had to escape Venezuela as a direct consequence of the sanctions regime that he implemented against Venezuela, and then also offered temporary protected status to. Donald Trump was such a fan of TPS that he actually offered an extension on the TPS, temporary protected status, that he had afforded to the Venezuelan migrants coming in from Venezuela, the refugees, on his way out. Now, 4 years after that fact, when he's back in office, he's back with a vengeance. He's now decided that if you are of Venezuelan descent in the United States of America with a temporary protected status, which means proper documentation, mind you, as a refugee, he will revoke it. He will treat you as a hostile enemy combatant, and he will falsely smear you and claim that you are a part of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. And even if judges decide that this is illegal and try to hit a TRO, temporary restraining order, to stop the administration from falsely shipping Venezuelans, not to Guantanamo Bay this time, but instead to the COT facility in El Salvador, which is a direct concentration camp, the Trump administration will still follow through. They do not care. It is a new era of fascism. Earlier this morning, I said, I think that an even darker chapter of American history might be upon us. People might turn around and say, what do you mean, Hassan? America was founded on indigenous genocide. America was founded on ethnic cleansing and upholding chattel slavery. America was built on white supremacist slavery. You're right. And yet I still think that this next chapter in our history might be even darker than that. Truly. Because it kind of feels like we are moving in to the new fascist movement here in the United States of America, like straight Nazi Germany. We have a lot more technological prowess to be able to engage in industrialized death. And we are officially there. Let's take a look.
Over the weekend, the Trump administration deported hundreds of Venezuelans that it says are gang members, despite a judge's order to turn the flights around. The law at issue dates to 1798. A constitutional clash is likely looming. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce is tracking the story. Good morning, Mary.
George, good morning. Well, we are now seeing a real showdown between this administration and the judicial branch. The White House this morning is celebrating this move, insisting the president is acting within his authority to speed up deportations, despite that directive from a federal judge that these Venezuelan immigrants be returned to the U.S. immediately. This morning, hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members are waking up in prison in El Salvador after the Trump administration rapidly deported them, ignoring a federal judge's directive. This video shared by El Salvador's president shows the...
It's sad that we will never ignore injunctions or court orders at the behest of a greater good for the public. Like, Like the what are you going to do about it mentality should have been ever present when the Biden administration was following the letter of the law and using its executive powers to abolish all student loan debt, right? Can't do that. No, we can't do that. Those are institutions that we must defend. Okay, here's how you do it for evil. It only goes in one direction.
The alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang arriving in San Salvador Saturday, just hours after a judge ordered planes carrying the men to immediately...
Yeah, they're doing straightforward Nazi propaganda on this, by the way. They're doing straightforward Nazi propaganda on this. They shaved their heads. There is no justification shown whatsoever that any of these people that were targeted and picked up were actually a part of any gang. Even if they were a part of Tren de Aragua, by the way, this kind of, like this right here, what they're doing here is completely unjustifiable. We have due process. You can't do that. Or you must not do that. We're officially in the black bagging stage. ICE comes in, does dragnets, grabs people, claims that they're Tren de Aragua, claims that they're a part of a terror group now, claims that they're a part of a gang, engaging in criminal activity, and then ships them to a foreign nation. And we've contracted out, because we outsource everything, we've also outsourced our concentration camp, dude. This is how it happens. For people that wonder, like, how did we get here? How did Nazi Germany become what it was? Like, this is it. You're here. You're watching it happen. You're watching an overseas example in Israel, and you're watching the domestic example here in the United States of America.
returned to the U.S. Trump over the weekend invoking the Alien Enemies Act, an obscure wartime law from 1798, allowing the government to deport non-citizens with little or no due process. The law last used to play a role in the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
I'll simply say they never should have been allowed into our country in the first place. It's ours.
Trump allowed them into the country. Trump is a major role player in why they had to leave Venezuela, okay? It's not just about Maduro. You need to understand something. I don't care what, like, Venezuelans that live here will say over and over again. I don't care what the media says over and over again. Trump and his sanctions regime on Venezuela played a very big role in the Venezuelan economy going tanking even further at a time when they needed aid, okay? They said Maduro's a bad guy, fair, sure, whatever, okay? And use that as a justification to make the economy scream. And the economy did scream. And as a direct consequence of that instability, many Venezuelans escaped Venezuela. They went to Colombia. They went to other Latin American countries. And a lot of them also came to the United States of America. Trump, politically, as he has done in the past, as the American administrations have done in the past with like Cubans who are escaping Cuba, right? Offered Venezuelans temporary protective status. He said, you guys are political refugees. We are anti-communist. You are anti-communist. Come to America. We'll use you, right? That's usually the goal for American empire. They bring in a bunch of reactionaries or bring in a bunch of people who are escaping political repression and use them as a propaganda tool. So that's what we did. The American government did that. And in the process, Donald Trump was such a fan of offering temporary protective status to the Venezuelan refugees that came into the United States of America that he actually extended it on his way out. And then Joe Biden became president for 4 years, and now he turned around and is revoking the TPS in this insanely violent manner, deciding that every single Venezuelan on U.S. soil that has documentation, mind you, documented or undocumented, but virtually all of the Venezuelans on U.S. soil are documented. They have the paperwork. They got temporary protective status. Understand that they have the documents. These are not undocumented migrants, okay? They have the documents, or they're in the process of getting their documentation, as in their court documents. The Trump administration turned around and black-bagged a bunch of Venezuelans that they had actually welcomed into the U.S. Inside of the U.S. boundaries, and in a pure political ploy, decided to ship them to the El Salvador Anti-Terror Prison Unit, COT. We've watched the El Salvador COT prison before on this broadcast because a bunch of right-wing Mexican YouTubers went there and glazed Bukele and also the prison structure and talked about how awesome it is that they're like torturing people there. Lights on 24/7. Here we are. Another gross violation of human rights. In El Salvador, we've been under a state of exception since 2021, meaning we have no constitutional rights. People can be jailed without committing a crime or ever seeing a judge. Bukele has shut down all transparency, so any Venezuelan sent here can end up in a concentration camp with no records or oversight. Yes, I know. The prison system in El Salvador right now, due to MS-13 gang activity that was truly violent, okay, which is another American issue that we that we basically gave to El Salvador, but I'm not going to get into the history of that right now. Having said that, because of the massive amounts of crime caused by MS-13, which was born out of the U.S. prison system, where we initially dumped El Salvadoran migrants that became radical in the California prison system, we without telling the El Salvadoran government, deported those migrants to El Salvador, creating a network, a back and forth for MS-13 to operate. MS-13 became this like incredibly powerful gang as a direct consequence of us deporting El Salvadoran criminals from the California prison system, from MS-13 into El Salvador without informing the government, without telling the El Salvadoran government that these guys were MS-13 gang members. You can say, sure thing, buddy. It's just the truth, okay? It's just the truth. I'm not even talking about Venezuelan gangs right now. I'm talking about MS-13 and how MS-13 became a thing, became like this internationally renowned gang. I'm not talking about Tren de Aragua. I'm talking about MS-13, okay? Pick up the pace. Maybe you can accidentally learn a thing or two. So, Nayib Bukele, who initially came into power with a fairly progressive ticket, okay, who had a fairly progressive background. Nayib Bukele is literally of Palestinian descent. Before he became this like weird cryptocurrency guy, he was actually seen as like part of the pink tide, the social democrat to socialist revolutionary figures that were winning a lot of elections all around Latin America. And then he quickly changed that attitude. He actually had a lot of rehabilitative programs initially. When Nayib Bukele came into power, he had rehabilitative programs in mind. He was like, we have to do due process. We have to make sure that like we fix the underlying material conditions to make sure that crime can never manifest ever again. And then he became this monster. Okay? And yes, for those of you who don't know, there are a lot of Palestinians or people of Palestinian descent living in Latin American countries. Anyway, he came in and he built this massive prison structure called COT. And he started doing dragnet operations where if you were even 11 steps removed, okay, without any care or consideration to how you became MS-13 adjacent or MS-13 aligned, because MS-13, the way that they work, they'll go to a village or they'll go to a town and they'll basically say, we're going to kill your mother and your daughter if you don't work with us, right? Like basically shopkeepers, like anyone and everyone that they could claim was actually MS-13, they just grabbed, black bagged, and put in front of a judge, sometimes 200 people at a time. 200 people sitting in front of a judge wearing a balaclava as the judge decides on all 200 being a part of MS-13 in real time like that. And once you have been decided, once you have been considered an MS-13 gang member, it's over for you. And that's what they did. That's what they did. And that's what they've been doing in El Salvador. Now, Bukele is saying you can use our concentration camps for the people that you're deporting from the United States of America. And that's precisely what's going on. Yeah. 7.7 million Venezuelans have left the country since 2015. Okay. They've gone mostly to other Latin American countries. Some of them have gone to Spain. And some of them have made their way all the way to the United States of America. The largest population went to Colombia, obviously, as I talked about before. This is a major destabilizing force. When you have 7.7 million refugees, you have a refugee crisis. And it did not have to be this way. Where is this? I remember reading this article about Bukele a few years ago. They interviewed a mother whose severely autistic son was abducted by the cops, and days after searching for him, found out he was sent to Supermax, where they don't even feed you consistently unless your family pays. Yeah. Even before he started the slave labor business, I could take one look at this guy and guess he was already embezzling from the treasury. Not that we needed the help, but American prestige will crater even further when everyone figures out the obvious here. Yeah. Nayib Bukele, who has been yelled at by Donald Trump, ironically enough, on numerous occasions, which is why I always thought it was strange. Donald Trump would go on CPAC and be like, Nayib Bukele, he sucks. He's dumping out his prisons, like probably because he doesn't know anything about Latin America. He probably thinks El Salvador is Venezuela or something, okay? And he would constantly shit on Nayib Bukele, who's also a crypto guy, is now working with him because he said, hey, it's great. Send us all of your deportees. We'll use them as slave labor in our fucking concentration camps. That's where we're at right now. I need you to understand how insane this is. I'm not being hyperbolic at all. Okay, this is not hyperbole. We are here. We are officially in Nazi Germany status, but unlike Nazi Germany's concentration camps being maintained directly by people of German descent or the foreign legions or whatever, we are outsourcing the concentration camp to El Salvador. Okay. Now watch this video. Watch this promotional video from Nayib Bukele and tell me that this isn't Nazi shit. Okay. Go ahead. Nayib Bukele says, today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization Tren de Aragua arrived in our country. They were immediately transferred to COT, the Terrorism Confinement Center, for a period of 1 year, renewable. The United States will pay a very low fee for them, but a high one for us. Over time, these actions, combined with the production already being generated by more than 40,000 inmates engaged in various workshops and labor under the Zero Idleness Program, will help make our prison system self-sustainable. As of today, it costs $200 million per year. On this occasion, the U.S. has also sent 23 MS-13 members wanted by Salvadoran justice, including 2 ringleaders. One of them is a member of the criminal organization's highest structure. This will help us finalize intelligence gathering, go after the last remnants of MS-13, including its former and new members, money, weapons, drugs, hideouts, collaborators, and sponsors. As always, we continue advancing in the fight against organized crime, but this time we are helping our allies, making our prison system self-sustainable and obtaining vital intelligence. They're making their prison system self-sustainable by doing slave labor. Okay? We're doing slave trade shit for Venezuelans who have not gotten any due process whatsoever. Venezuelans that have not, this is a work camp, okay? Arbeit macht frei shit. Understand? Work sets you free shit. It is I don't know what words to use. Like, it is not hyperbolic at all when I say this. We're there. We're here. Okay? This is it. This is the first step of the final act of the darkest chapter of American empire. Okay? Full tilt fascism. It was the first thing that Rubio made headlines doing when the admin got into office. It supposedly can hold 40,000 people, and Rubio said, we'd like to send U.S. citizens there as well. Yes, I remember. Did they copy this from Xinjiang? Oh my God, there are still people in here talking about Xinjiang. I'm losing my mind. Dude. Focus on what's happening in front of you. Stop trying to cope by being like, look at China. Okay? What are you saying? Do you like what happened in Xinjiang? Do you think that that was good? If your answer is no, why the fuck are you saying that right now as a counter in this circumstance? When I'm talking as an American about what we are doing to documented migrants whose documentation we are revoking. Holy fuck. Yeah, Americans see something American happening, Americanly in America. What are we, a bunch of Asians? What are we, fucking Chinese, dude? No, this is America. It's happening in America. Do you have nothing to say about this in the United States of America? This is where we're at. And plenty of people are celebrating this. They're championing it. They're salivating at the prospect of doing this kind of fascist nonsense. It is alarming to say the least. It's so weird to also talk about Xinjiang when America did this in U.S. borders against people of Japanese descent, when we had internment camps for people of Japanese descent. Okay? We did this already in World War II, which was already unacceptable, completely unacceptable. You understand? No, we didn't do this post 9/11. You're wrong. No, we did not do this post 9/11. The Patriot Act greatly normalized a surveillance state and basically set the legal basis for doing a lot of this stuff. For sure, it was an expansion of pre-existing, quote unquote freedoms that people had against government surveillance like this. But no, this is different. This is an expansion on top of that. We are reaching the end point. We are reaching the logical conclusion of the post 9/11 world. But even after 9/11, we didn't do internment camps overseas for people that we decided were a part of the axis of evil. Okay? Yes, America did this to Germans too during World War I and II. Yes. America did this during World War I as well, yes. Yes, you did. Guantanamo. This is a... Chatters. I know how Guantanamo Bay works, okay? There was still some semblance. This isn't a defense of Guantanamo Bay and the process. We are operating on a different scale than Guantanamo Bay now. Okay? Wake up. Guantanamo Bay is a permanent land lease agreement with the Cuban government, and they can't really say anything about it, obviously, so that we can avoid American laws and engage in torture and numerous other things on non-American soil. Guantanamo Bay captured people from all around the world with very little evidence whatsoever. Many of them were simply innocent, but were considered to be a terrorist, and were routinely tortured under a military facility. Okay? This here is just people on the basis of their ethnicity being denaturalized or having their immigration papers revoked while being called, utilizing the same technique, but with at a much greater scale. It's a much larger scale. For like every 100 person that was nabbed from Muslim communities in the United States of America or all around the world, you are going to experience this tenfold, because there are 400 or 500,000 Venezuelan migrants on U.S. soil right now with documentation. It is a scale that is far larger than Gitmo. It is an expansion of what we have done so far. Anyway, watch this. Watch this and tell me if this isn't Nazi propaganda. They grabbed a Venezuelan dude for having tattoos. Like that's what they're doing. And they're like, think about it. We didn't use the Alien Sedition Act post 9/11. We didn't even use the Alien Sedition Act post 9/11. There is no war happening right now, and the Trump administration is claiming that it's an invasion, that migrants are invading. How do you not see that this is an even greater expansion of the previous surveillance state? This is not a justification for the previous surveillance state. I have fought against it every single step of the way. Having said that, this is moving beyond that now. This is a logical conclusion. Yeah, they shaved everyone's heads. Except for this guy, apparently. Oh, they shave him in COT. Hold on, I gotta pee.
Hombre. César Eliseo Sotomayor.
Quite!
Oof. Why are they firing their heads down when moving them? It's all different ways of engaging in like body torture, dehumanization, and to keep them in a state where it's an intimidation tactic. It's a way to keep them as like non-threatening as possible. It's like more difficult to do, more difficult to resist. It's also dehumanizing. It's like when you realize that the cruelty is the point, you will recognize why they're doing all of this. Yeah, human rights organizations have been actively writing about COT, actively writing about the lack of due process in El Salvador for almost a decade at this point, since it began, since it opened up. These facilities opened up, half a decade. What? You got fooled? This is El Salvadoran gangs, not people extracted from the U.S. Dog, they're using this as a propaganda piece. They're using this as a propaganda piece to say, this is what we're doing to the Venezuelans. What do you mean I got fooled? That's what Nayib Bukele is saying in the fucking video. What are you talking about? And we already know that the American government did ship a bunch of Venezuelan refugees. 238 of them. Then why are you showing the propaganda? Dude, why is it that when you're just in the wrong, there's something in you that just says like, no, I'm going to double down and like move. I'm just going to move the goalpost. Like, it's okay, man. It's all right. Like, we get things wrong sometimes. I get things wrong sometimes. You know what I do when I get something wrong? I say, I'm sorry. I was wrong about that. You can do that too. It's a healthy thing to do. All right. It's fine.
Responsibility to protect our families, to keep our streets clean and safe. And that's exactly what the president said he was going to do.
But after some non-citizens represented by the ACLU sued the administration, that federal judge in an emergency hearing Saturday.
Yeah, they also actively ignored the court orders, okay? The White House says it ignored a court order to turn around 2 plane loads of alleged Venezuelan gang members because the flights were over international waters and therefore the ruling didn't apply. Okay? It doesn't matter anymore. Like, they're basically saying, like, nope, there's nothing you can do about it. They were already in the air. Like, it's crazy. No rules, baby. Once the plane wheels are up and you're on international airspace, is over. You can do whatever you want.
Saturday ordered any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States, adding this is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately. The 2 planes already in the air, sources tell us the administration made the calculated decision to ignore that directive. Sources say the planes carrying the alleged gang members took off during the hearing, the administration eager to get them in the air out of U.S. airspace and over international waters before the judge's ruling. In response to that order to turn the planes around, the president of El Salvador, a Trump ally, posting, "Oopsie, too late."
They needed to be brought back.
The other side of this, aside from like the active cruelty that we are watching in broad daylight as the government is functioning, in this like fascist state, collaborating with another fascist government, is that they're so fucking lame. Like, oopsie libtard. It's like I don't know what the historic equivalent of this is, okay? Like, the aesthetics are also busted. Everything is devolved. It's like moving away from the old Nazi font to Comic Sans as you're doing fascism.
And the judge absolutely had authority to do that. The United States government, the executive branch, defying a federal court order raises the stakes enormously, not just in this case, but for how we're going to proceed as a constitutional republic.
But the White House this morning insists the administration did not violate the court order and that the president acted within his authority, claiming federal courts have no jurisdiction over the president's conduct of foreign affairs or ability to remove foreign enemies. Now, all of this is coming as a Brown University professor, Dr. Rasha Alawi, a kidney transplant specialist, has been deported despite having a valid work visa and despite a court order temporarily blocking her expulsion. A Lebanese citizen, she was detained last week after returning to the U.S. from visiting family and put on a plane out of the country, again, despite that court order. A hearing in this case is expected later today.
Okay,
George.
Mary, thanks. Let's get more on this from our chief Washington correspondent, John Carl. John, let's start with...
I get what you're saying, but why would you want gang members in your country? Oh my God. Oh my God. Chatter. I'm going to explain this one more time. Why do you believe everything that the government tells you? Why do you automatically assume that every single person being deported is a gang member? Why do you not want the American court system to actually actively handle violent gang members? Why? Not every country is El Salvador. Not every country has a concentration camp like this. Okay? If there are violent criminals that have engaged in violent criminal acts and they don't have citizenship on U.S. soil, I want them to be prosecuted and placed in an American facility. Okay? I want them I want the victims to see justice. That's number one. Number two, these people that are being deported, a big part of this problem right now is that they're nabbing everybody, whoever they can, without any sort of consideration, without any due process whatsoever. Due process is a right. It exists for a very good reason. It's so that the government doesn't do this, because the government that can do this to Venezuelans can do this to other Americans as well eventually. And if you think that they're not going to do that, you are fucking delusional. They are lying to you. They're trying to get you to respond by going, I don't understand. Why do you want violent criminals to stay in this country? That is the entire purpose. That is the entire reason as to why they are claiming anyone and everyone is a terrorist. They said this about Mahmoud Khalil, who was not a terrorist at all. He was a Columbia University student negotiator. He was a lead negotiator for the student movement on Columbia campus. He had never violated a single law, and they actively admitted that. They said he didn't violate anything. We just think he's a terrorist. We think he's a threat to American foreign policy, so he's now going to get deported. We're going to revoke his green card. A green card means you have legal permanent status. A green card is one step removed from being a naturalized citizen. The only difference between a green card holder and a full-blown U.S. citizen is that you just, or a naturalized citizen, is that you don't have the right to vote. That's it. He endorsed terrorism? No, he didn't. No, he did not. And for the record, even if he had, that is not, it's not, you can't deport someone or revoke their citizenship for that reason. You can't do that. Not only did he not do that, but even if he had done that, guess what? There's a thing called the First Amendment, dipshit. It's specifically designed for this. Do you understand? It's no different than saying being Jewish, being of Jewish background in Nazi Germany and endorsing socialism, communism, trade unionism makes you a terrorist. It is the exact same principle. How do you not understand? Every government that has historically engaged in acts of fascism have created its own legal structure in an effort to justify these actions. And a lot of dumb fucks who don't understand anything about history and can't comprehend that will just go along with it. We'll just go, oh, well, the government said he's a terrorist, so I guess it's fine. Not realizing that the vague standard of terrorism, the vague definition of terrorism is unironically the perfect way to do this. Instantly ban Lamau, W streamer, I guess, Kappa. I unbanned you so you can keep being stupid in the chat if you want to. But it is kind of funny that you would complain about being banned. You can still watch the stream while you're simultaneously justifying revoking someone's green card. Like, if you think this minor nuisance for you is a major problem, then try to understand, like, putting someone in this torturous condition, detaining them falsely without due process, and trying to revoke their legal permanent residency. A person with an American wife who's 8 months pregnant. Like, please. It will come to you as well. Also, yeah, we'll get around to you as well has always been the project, but it's still striking to see them say it. Fascism wants to eat you too. Its hunger can't be sated. Will Chamberlain, denaturalize and deport Mehdi Hassan. Yeah. All that forehead and no brain. Don't worry, we'll get around to you as well. I hear tailoring's a thriving industry in Vietnam. Anyone that hurts my feelings must be deported and denaturalized. That's where we're at here for a lot of these guys. They're very openly saying it. They're very openly saying it, where it's like, listen, we will denaturalize, we will deport. You're not a part of the in-group. If you're not a part of the in-group, we will come for you. We want the government to come for you. It's crazy that this is not like a universal, that Americans are not universally against this. And yet there's still libs and conservatives watching the stream and hesitant to call these people and their sentiments fascist. I know. They will never, they will not realize what is happening, okay? They will not realize what's going on. And slowly but surely, they will be advocates for it. That's it. That's how it goes. And hopefully, if justice is served one day, they'll turn around and hide their head in shame. They'll be like, oh, no, we were always against this. You know, always. What do you mean? I was totally against this. Like, the fact that a judge, a federal judge, put forth a court-backed injunction to stop the deportation process, and that the White House simply ignored it, is another severe move in the direction of destroying everything. Like, what the last ticker tape, the last piece of ticker tape that held this entire process together is gone. It is perishing in front of our eyes.
With the deportations to El Salvador, we just heard Mary say the administration knew they were defying the order. So this is likely to head perhaps to the Supreme Court.
Yes, George, as Mary reported, it was we are told, a calculated decision to ignore the judge's directive. The hearing on this is rather extraordinary. The hearing on this had already started before those planes took off. It was before the judge actually...
If you find it amazing that Americans are supporting this, you don't understand America. This has always been here. Chatters that come in here to tell me, of all people, okay, that this is their "I told you so" moment. Yes, dude, you wanna maybe take a deep breath and try to comprehend why I think this is an even greater expansion of previous revocations of civil liberties and rights that people had. I'm trying to wake up people who don't recognize what is going on, as it's like slamming them in the head. Okay? Just simply being like, this is how it's always been, is so utterly unproductive and incredibly stupid. Especially because this is not how it's always been. Do you understand? This is not. It is not how it's always been. Every single step that you will point to throughout American history has moved the needle in the direction of this moment, okay? It's always been an expansion. Barack Obama accelerating ICE deportations and giving more power to ICE after the agency was developed, when there was a previous agency called INS, okay, for immigration enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security is invented after 2001. ICE is a part of that. Obama greatly expands ICE's power and lack of jurisdiction, really, where they can just like operate everywhere. Trump comes in, also does the same. No one reins it back. Joe Biden doesn't rein it back. Trump comes back in, and now here we are. The reason why I say this will not stop at simply non-citizens is because of is precisely because like it is a consistent expansion of like violating previous rules that kind of were supposed to stop you from doing this. Okay?
Issued the order, but it was after it was quite clear the judge was skeptical of the use of this 1798 Aliens Enemies Act. By the way, that is an act that has only been used 3 times in all of American history. So the judge was clearly skeptical of it. And then when the order came, the order was clear that even if the planes had taken off, they were to turn around. Let me read you what the judge said. You shall inform your clients of this immediately. Any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. Now, the White House says that this is an order that was an extraordinary imposition on the executive branch, that the judge simply had no authority to interfere with the president's conduct on national security and foreign affairs matters. But as you also heard Mary point out, this has huge implications for the other court cases working their way through right now on other actions by this president.
Which is why it's likely to go to the Supreme Court. And the Brown University doctor had a valid work visa. So what authority did the administration use to deport her?
Well, her attorneys say she had a valid H-1B visa to be an assistant professor at Brown University. By the way, she's educated in the United States, Washington University, Yale University. We'll find out more on this at today's hearing.
Meantime, the president also claimed overnight that the pardons issued by former President Biden are void for the January 6th committee members, but the pardon power in the Constitution for the president is absolute.
Oh, no. Oh, no. He's going to lock up Liz Cheney. He's going to... Oh, no. Democrats will maybe get animated now. When Joe Brandon is in the crosshairs, Democrats will finally get animated. Thousands of people deported. I sleep. Joe Biden's pardon might be, Joe Biden's like personal pardons might be revoked. This is the greatest threat to American, to American civil liberties. Yeah. Yeah, maybe they'll spring into action now.
It is. And by the way, there's no indication that President Biden signed these with an auto pen. That's what President Trump is arguing, that these were signed with an auto pen and therefore they're not valid. We don't know that they were signed with an auto pen, but even if they were, it's unclear that that would be an issue. In fact, President Bush back in 2005, the White House did a study on this and determined that even orders signed with an auto pen are valid orders. That proposition's never been tested in court. I guess the big question here, though, George, is does this imply that that President Trump wants to actually prosecute members of the January 6th committee?
John Carl, thanks very much.
Following the Trump administration's move to deport more than 130 Venezuelan immigrants by invoking the Alien Enemies Act over the weekend, you might be wondering, what exactly is that law? Well, the Alien Enemies Act was passed in 1798. It says if the U.S. is either at war with or facing an invasion from a foreign nation or government, then the president can remove non-U.S. citizens affiliated with the, quote, hostile country in question. The act has been used just 3 times in U.S. history, during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. That last and most recent example famously led to the internment of 31,000 non-citizens of Japanese, German, and Italian descent after the bombings of Pearl Harbor. By the way, decades later, under President Reagan,